On this episode's intro with Grandma Bellitti, I asked her if she had sex ed when she was in school. But you never had like a health class, right? Where they taught you about sexual health or anything like that?
No, we just had hygiene.
Hygiene?
And that was all we had. That was a big...
I usually say that to Jean, who works here. I say, hi, Jean.
Oh, wait, not that high, not that hygiene.
Oh, not that, okay.
This is a kind of, it's just a body care, you know, how you take care of your body. And
shower and floss
and all
and
that
brush
stuff.
your teeth.
Yeah. Well, and that's so...
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, ours, we had that class back when I was in high school.
Sure.
But it was very...
Basic.
Yeah, very...
Basic, yeah. Just basic.
They actually brought out a banana and told us how to put a condom on in health class.
Oh, my goodness. They didn't do that.
Yeah, on a banana.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Now they do that?
Yeah.
Oh.
They actually have like baby robots that some people have. They'll have to like keep the robot alive for like a week with a partner.
It's a new world. It's a new world. I tell you, it's so different than my days, what we had. It was so different. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Different. But that's all right. People get to learn. I guess they have to learn.
Sure. All right. What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Counter. Today, we are going to talk about condoms specifically and just dive deeper into sex beyond the conversation we had with Danielle in the previous episode about STDs and prevention. Obviously, that led to condoms, and there's a lot more that I think we should discuss when it comes to condoms and safe sex. James is here, as always, and Janelle, who works at the pharmacy as well, and wanted to share her perspective on safe sex and ask some other questions related to that as well, which I think is important because clearly we were talking about, okay, abstinence is, not always realistic, right?
Sure.
And so the obvious solution is condoms or some sort of contraceptive like that. But clearly, especially in people that are older, it's extremely, extremely common to, STDs are very common, right? So I don't know if that's because it's, a mood killer kind of thing of the condoms, or if it's just because people are older and think, well, I can't get pregnant, so now I don't have to use this kind of thing. And maybe that's why there are more cases. You would probably have a better idea on that than I would if there's any kind of rationality behind that, those statistics. But that's, I guess, where we're going to kind of start the conversation here. Yeah. Did you have any questions you wanted to throw in? I know you said you had some questions you wanted to ask.
Well, one question would be, when do you put the condom on, and who puts the condom on?
I think that's obviously the first answer to who puts it on. Is definitely depends, obviously. But I believe both partner definitely need to check, make sure we're putting it on correctly. But when it comes to when, from the beginning, for the most part, should be every time. As Vince briefly mentioned, it's sometimes kills the mood, right? To stop and try to put on condom. Or some men they don't want to use it. Or some women, they just don't want to use it at all as well. But, it's really important that the one thing that's important, if you're in a monogamous relationship, and then if you are sure there's no problem with each other, then that's a euphemism,
but
and then you may be able to skip the condom then. But if that's not the case, most likely I strongly urge you to use a condom, because you that brief moment of putting it on, as long as you put it on correctly, doesn't really take that long.
Well, speaking of that, why don't we go back to middle school health class very quickly and actually demonstrate the way that they demonstrated back then how to put on a condom. Now, on a side note, if this is what you're working with here, I would see a doctor immediately, because this probably doesn't look healthy. Now, when you're opening it, right, I usually push it to the side so you don't rip it or anything like that. the latex itself, that is. Do you have any thoughts on latex or other materials while we're here? And I'm mentioning latex.
There are definitely different types of condoms. Latex is the most common one, obviously. But those people who are very allergic to latex, there are non-latex ones. And there is also lambskin ones that are more natural. That's going back in the day. But just briefly to differentiate, still out of those three, latex seems to be the most safe option to go with. There is, I believe, a little more the rate of possible breakage when it comes to non-latex. Also, the lambskin one, it may help still prevent pregnancy, but it doesn't really protect you against STDs.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. So when you're applying it, you want to make sure it's in the right direction. So if you pull it down the wrong direction too, the wrong stuff is on the outside. Essentially, I don't even know what's on it. Right.
Well, not only that, it's a lot easier to do it here when there's a lot of lights around,
Well,
obviously. But
point,
something that generally the way the condom is made, you should be able to feel where the tip is so that you can hold on to it for the air hole.
So essentially, you grab the tip here just to make sure there's space at the top.
Yep.
Put it on here. It's a little pointy, and then you roll it down this way. And this is a very unusual angle we're working with here. And you want to make sure you roll it down all the way, or as much as possible at least, so it's all protected and covered there. And there we go. No babies for this banana. But yeah, that's how you correctly do it. And make sure, because like you said too, if it's done too late in the process, it's not going to prevent anything.
Right. There has been cases where
this guy down.
There's been cases that they said they used condom, but somehow they still ended up with their getting pregnant or having STDs. It's because they were, and when we talked to them, they said, well, I put it on last minute.
Right.
That's generally not the safest way to do it. I mean, with the percentage of getting pregnant with pre-ejaculation is pretty slim, but the chances are there.
Sure.
But when it comes to STDs, still, it's very,
any fluid exchange.
Any fluid exchange can be very, scary, and as we talked with Danielle, there's a lot of possibility that can happen.
Right.
A number of different STDs out there. So it's important that you start off with you try using the condom.
Right.
Now, when it comes to killing the mood, there are different types of condoms out there. For example, we talked about, we had questions from the customers possibly with flavor condoms for a different type of sex. Also, there are different thickness. So the goal is...
Does that impact the efficacy of it at all? Do you know? The thickness?
I would assume so. Now, when they way they promote it is that, it's still pretty strong. But regardless, you still want to make sure that it is intact in the process where you're having a relationship. Actually, on that note, please do not put on 2 condoms. That actually does not increase chance. That actually does not decrease chance of any pregnancy. It actually causes more friction between the condom and actually causing it to break. So please do not use 2 condoms at once.
Double bagging, not a thing.
Not a thing.
Is there any other questions you wanted to ask or anything like that, Janelle?
Well, lubrication. Is there a specific lubrication that you would need to use?
Well, when it comes to lubrication, especially, it's generally to help ladies, especially if they have a dryness, or just to increase, to intensify the relationship a little bit, right? And lube can be used obviously all the time, but major things, especially when you're using with condoms, that you want to use water-based lubricant, not oil-based, because oil-based lubricant can cause the latex condom to break. So that's important to know. At the same time, when it comes to using the lubricant, some people, and again, it kills the mood. It's cold sometimes, there are definitely different types out there.
Cold's not doing anyone any favors.
All right. So there are more that, warming lubricant. And there are different things out there that more really can, spice up things in the relationship as well.
Sure. Cool. What else you got, Janelle?
Well, we were talking about killing the mood, and so I know for some people they don't like to use them because it has it is a mood killer, but it also has a different feeling. So, I don't know, what were your thoughts on?
Well, I mean, that's absolutely true, and and again, sometimes even they know all this, at the end of the day, they're like, well, still, we're not really enjoying it. Whether it's from men's perspective or from women's perspective, right? And we are all very familiar with male performance enhancing medications, products, supplements out there. But at the same time, I think it's important to know that there are things for women as well to actually enjoy and not to kill the mood at the same time. There is actually a prescription compound cream that can be done. That's a combination of many different ingredients, actually. Arginine, aminophylline, sometimes testosterone even.
All blood flow, basically.
Basically, the long run, yes, is to increase the blood flow that is, applied directly to women's genitals, the vagina, for the most part. And it actually helps to increase the blood flow so that for better sensation. And same thing with men. A lot of the performance enhancing drugs for men is to increase the blood flow. That's
Right.
the bottom line, really.
And this compounded, so you would need to obviously have a prescription from the doctor,
Correct.
but it's available at a compounding pharmacy like ours, for example, could make it. And literally, we will get a prescription for what's called Scream Cream.
Yes.
No joke, for the obvious reasons that you would think why it would be called Scream Cream.
Yes. And, depending on the pharmacy, depending on the doctor, there are different formulations. It's not one hard set medication out there. So I would definitely speak to the doctor. One definitely important thing out of that, I just mentioned arginine, which is commonly used for blood flow, increased blood flow. If you have STD called herpes, which we talked about before with Danielle, arginine can actually increase the spread of herpes. So sometimes doctor would ask the question and say, you know what, that product should not be in that ingredient. That ingredient should not be in the cream. So that there are definitely, you definitely do need to speak to a professional about it.
And be honest, and we've talked about this before, the whole point of this show is transparency. So if that is something, don't tell the doctor no because you're embarrassed, because they're trying to help you in that sense.
Yes, and another thing that I would like to bring up is actually we talk about CBD all the time.
Ah, yes.
Yes, CBD can be also used to spice up things. For ladies, for the most part, and for men actually as well. We have a product called Ananda Bliss.
Right.
It's literally, you can use it in a loop, right? You use about a quarter size amount. Generally, it's a sufficient amount. One downside of it, unfortunately, it is oil-based, and as I mentioned it before, it will break.
Right.
It can possibly break latex condom, so that's something to be very well aware of. CBD can also help with the blood flow, decrease pain, and combine that with different essential oils, arginine, some cocoa butter as well, and also tastes good as well. So you can be used very liberally to spice up things. They generally recommend to use about 15 minutes prior to actually having to getting the action, so to say. But it's actually pretty highly recognized lately, and a lot of people do like the product.
Okay.
So there are different. It's so that the whole point is that there are other options out there, and I believe that there is an actual prescription medication that I believe I mentioned before, a different segment called Addy, that's used to help women who has decreased libido. So there are different things out there, but the major thing is safety. And while you are practicing safe sex, you can also enjoy it as well.
Sure. We talked about this on an earlier episode as well, but just to reiterate here briefly, when it comes to any quote unquote solution that you're looking for, it's always important to identify the root cause. So before you even, experiment with some of these options, talk to us. You can visit us at hbpharmacy.com, gasparsbest.com. If you want to see that product James mentioned, the Ananda Bliss, that's on gaspars.com in our product shop. But always, I think it's good to talk to a practitioner and help to understand, because there are other things that impact libido and some of those things too that
Absolutely.
may, a product can support it, but if there's a specific cause for it, then attacking that, is also a good way to approach the problem too. Is there anything else you guys wanted to bring up or mention here as we wrap it up this episode?
I think you answered my last question as well. So
Okay.
Good.
Cool. Sounds good. Well, like I said, check us out online, hbpharmacy.com, gasparsbest.com, and we will see you on the next episode of Behind the Counter. Thanks.
Thank you.
It was a productive season. And I think ultimately, just like with all of our episodes, the idea here is to empower you as a patient. So our goal is to help you feel more informed and to at least be aware of what's out there, what's going on. Here are the questions that you should be asking. So whether it's to, your pharmacist or someone, like us, who we can talk you through some of that stuff, or if it's to your doctor,